Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to HANA's fourth quarter and year-end review. Let's start off with our fourth quarter operating profits, which came in at 582 million, which was up 49% from a year ago, but down 33% from the previous quarter. So year on year, the fourth quarter sales increased 14% and our operating profit increased 49%. Margins also increased from 6 to 8, 2%, and EBITDA increased 46% to over 1 billion baht. Net profit was up over 2,000%, over 1 billion baht, and the reason of the big change, you may remember in Q4 last year, we had a substantial write-down due to an investment overseas, which of course did not happen this year. Our cash and short-term investments were down 39% from 6 billion to 3.6 billion as we continue to invest in our future businesses. Quarter on quarter, sales were down 6% and operating profits were also down 33%. The third quarter was very strong for us, and as we move towards the end of the year, we could see demand beginning to drop, especially in our assembly and test business. Operating margins also dropped 3%, but EBITDA dropped 18% from 1.2 to 1 billion. From an annual basis, HANA reached a total operating profit of 2.42 billion, 2,422 million, up 9% from a year ago of 2.219 billion. Okay, so we've seen steady growth since the past 4 years. And year on year, if we compare the 21 and 22, sales were up 14%, operating profits up 9%, margins were the same, EBITDA up 15%, over 4 billion, and net profit 2.1 billion. So let's move on to the individual operations, starting with our EMS business in Lamphun. In the fourth quarter, our sales were up year on year, 14%, so that was a strong performance, particularly for our automotive and test and measurement business, which remains very good. For PC, this is a business you may remember we plan to reduce and exit, and this year we really will exit most of the laptop touchpad assemblies, which we used to do for over 15 years. Our medical business, which has been predominantly hearing aids, has now taken on a new area, cardiac rhythmic monitoring. This is a very exciting device that monitors your heart, and this business can be even bigger than the hearing aid business. So the medical business is looking very interesting. The outlook for the first quarter continues to remain fairly good, but unfortunately, the weak US dollar and higher energy costs will impact us. Moving on to our micro business in China, Jiaxing. Revenues were up 14% year on year, and we saw a strong recovery after COVID. Mainly our access control business, which suffered very badly during the COVID period, came back very strongly because people started to travel, go back to schools, public buildings, offices, and hotels. And this is the type of business now that comes back very strongly. In fact, we still have some certain IC issues, deliveries, but the situation is improving. You may remember China decided to do the U-turn in their zero COVID policy, and we had a very big jump in infections. It was very short. Moving on to the car sales, just a bit of background information on how we see the big sectors for us. So this year, analysts are projecting a small increase of around 3.8% to around 84 million vehicles, but a lot will depend on the concerns surrounding high interest rates, because a lot of people buy cars and borrow money. Nevertheless, we continue to see strong demand for our automotive customers. PC, as I mentioned earlier, had a big drop according to Gartner's, declining of 28% in the fourth quarter, which must be a record. So that's one of the reasons why HANA does not really want to fight for this business, because the margins are slim and the growth is negative. Moving on to our assembly and test business in UTR. In the fourth quarter, sales were up 3%. But frankly speaking, the semiconductor cycle, which everyone watches very carefully, has definitely started to turn down. And we started to see reductions in loading from pretty much all our customers. So unfortunately, this we believe is going to continue for the first half of this year. And we're projecting a decline of between 15 and 18% of our loadings, although we expect in the second half of the year for the situation to improve. And when you add that to a stronger Thai baht and higher energy costs, this, of course, will impact our margins. We do, however, see opportunities due to the US-China decoupling tensions, but they will not really come through to us until sometime next year. Moving on to the IC business in China, revenues were up 15%. There was some improvements in IC loading, but still remaining low because of the weakness in the mobile. You may know that our operation in China has quite a large exposure to the China mobile phone sector, and that business still remains weak, although we do expect some improvement in the second half of this year. Our EV modules still remain pretty good, but we have concerns again for the second half of this year because a lot of EV car companies are cutting prices, and I'm talking about more the expensive ones, not the cheaper ones. Okay. That said, we see a huge opportunity to develop our power packaging modules as our PMS operation in Korea ramps up. And so over time, we plan to replace our exposure to the mobile phone business into the power management business. Our LED projector modules, which is basically a consumer demand-driven business, is expected to recover after China does the U-turn and consumer spending starts to improve. And we have started the new business of RFID inlay production. The equipment came in at the beginning of this year, and we hope to start mass production very, very soon. And this will be one of the key drivers of our China operation over the next few years. So a touch on the smartphone business. Last year, it was reported that it was one of the lowest for over 10 years. In the fourth quarter, a drop of 17% and a drop of 11% over the year. And this happened at the start of the Ukrainian conflict with Russia. And then when China locked down, this had a big impact. And remember, HANA's main exposure to the mobile phone business is the Android, not the Apple space, okay? The forecast for the overall mobile phone shipments next year is still to drop, but not as much as last year. So the projection now is around 4%, according to Gartner's. So just to touch on the semiconductor cycle, you can see at the right, you see a big drop in December year on year, 14.7%, and month on month, 4.4%. So clearly now the high interest rates that the Federal Reserve and many other central banks are imposing is having an impact on discretionary spending, right? People are buying less of the things they bought during the COVID lockdown. The outlook in general for the whole sector is down 4%, but you must understand that the semiconductor is a very big industry, and the big drops are in PC, consumer, but not other areas like automotive and power management. In fact, whilst the overall market is expected to drop by about 4%, the power management business is expected to increase by about 4.7%. But bear in mind that the power management sector is only about 10% of the global semiconductor business. It's about 550 billion as a percentage of around 600 billion. Sorry, 50 billion as opposed of 600 billion. So here's a chart to give you an idea of our loadings over the past 5 quarters, and you can see they've been steadily dropping during that period. And this is to be expected as the semiconductor situation continues to be weak. And we think that in the first half of this year, you will see that number drop further, and then some improvement coming in the second half of this year. Moving on to our operation in China, sales are up quite strongly, 41%. Our telecom and micro business increased after the COVID situation improved. We got hit pretty bad in America because, you know, Americans don't really care about COVID. Nobody wears a mask, so everybody got COVID pretty quickly. Now the situation is much improved, so things got a lot better for us. Our RFID tire tag business grew, but not massively. We are expecting to see a better improvement this year as people start to travel. Our inlay business, which is the new business that we have, grew 300% year on year. And in fact, it would have done better had we not had constraints to the chip supplies for this business. So here's a good example where, in general, you see semiconductor business going down, but we can't get enough semiconductors for the inlay business. We have a new building, I think I told you about this, which we purchased, which is going to be 2.5 times the size of our existing one. And we've had some problems with finding workers to do the retrofit. So this is pushed back to the end of Q1. The overall outlook for Ohio is to see quite strong growth, and we're projecting over 20% top line growth, driven specifically by tire tags and inlays. So just to remind you that HANA Ohio is the world's leading producer of RFID tire tags, and we work closely with Michelin, the French tire company, and we have exclusive license arrangements to sell our tire tags under Michelin license to other manufacturers. And we've qualified companies like Continental and Goodyear. The RFID asset tags are going to grow around 12% over the next 4 or 5 years. So this is high growth regardless. And what this is a device that's going to replace over time the barcode. In the next 5 years, more and more retailers will adopt this technology, and that's why the growth rate is very, very high. And where are we today? So we are one of only 7 companies that are being qualified to support the major US retailers like Walmart, Dick's, Dillard's, Nordstrom, etc. Walmart alone will consume over 10 billion of these tags this year. So this is extremely high growth. And I think over the next 3 to 4 years, everything that is sold in Walmart will have an active tag on it. And I hope we will have a big part of that share. And there are many other major programs, okay? So the total retail non-food market is estimated around 21 billion tags and increasing to 52 billion tags over the next 3 years. It's a very, very high growth business. So here's our new factory. The reason why we bought this new factory is to cope specifically with the high growth in this RFID active tags, okay? So we're a little bit behind because the workers couldn't come, but we'll get there by the middle of this year. And here's a picture of our new auto line tag, which we put in China, because all these big American companies buy a lot of their products from China. So we have to deliver the tags to China. This picture shows 3 machines, and we have another 3 machines coming at the end of this year, and we plan to expand even further next year as well. Moving on to Cambodia, sales are up 70%. Of course, Cambodia is a small company. We have a new project, passive components, which started mass production. Unfortunately, our remote control business, which was the main business, was down because that relates to people staying at home because of COVID. So that situation has obviously gone back. But we continue to re-engineer this operation, and we're putting it under the control of Lampoon Management, which we think we will get a lot more activity and closer cooperation between the 2 divisions. And we have a lot of opportunities under the Trans-American Agreement, TAA, which allows certain products, if they're assembled in a TAA location, which is Cambodia, can be sold to US government. And we have a new project with one of our major customers, Keysight, needing TAA, which will start in the fourth quarter of this year. And that's going to grow quite substantially. And we believe should get close to our target of break even by the end of the year. So here's a chart on the end applications. You can see telecom down, auto improved well, industrials down, opto flat, RFD up, consumer up slightly, PC down, and medical improving. So overall, the outlook for this year is as follows. Obviously, you've got the Thai baht has strengthened against the US dollar, but of course, the baht has been quite volatile. I'll show you another chart. Power costs are up 13%, but we see some announcements. Maybe this will come down a little bit in the middle of the year. I hope so. Minimum wage increase of 5% last October. For us is around 3%, but we do expect more minimum wage increases because we have an election. Politicians will want to offer, incentives to get votes. The demand drivers on the negative side. So as I mentioned, our OSAT IC business is getting low as the cycle goes down, especially for PC and consumer. Mobile continues to be weak, although we do expect that to improve in the second half of the year. On the positive side, automotive remains quite strong at this time. Test and measurement also. Our RFID business is expanding and returning back, and the inlay ramp up will continue this year. Of course, we have the high growth of silicon carbide, which I'll talk about in a minute. And the China U-turn, we hope, will bring a lot more consumer demand from the second world largest economy towards the second half of this year. Here's a chart just updated. You can see the Thai baht. It was went to as low as 38, right? And then all the way down to 32.66, big drop. The Thai baht was the strongest currency versus the US dollar at the beginning of this year. And then the Thai baht got a little bit weaker, is close to 35, as the Federal Reserve continues to want to increase interest rates. So just a summary of our capital expenditure and liquidity. We generated 1 billion baht in the fourth quarter, up from 718 million. Our capex was 682, down from 992. We made a gain of 450 million on a mark-to-market basis as the baht strengthened, compared to a loss of 41 million last year when the baht weakened, okay? And our cash is reduced from 6 to 3.6 billion, a decrease of 42. So silicon carbide. So in the fourth quarter, PMS revenues were up over 500%, but of course last year we hardly had any activity. So we generated $4.6 million in the fourth quarter, and we continue to integrate our mass production equipment and fine-tune the whole process. You may remember we launched our silicon carbide MOSFET, which is the most important device, in May, and we have been able to start delivering more samples during the course of last year, and the demand has been very strong because it's a very good product. So we're very proud of our performance on that, and we're starting to see a lot more interest, and we will ramp up this production already starting in Q1 this year. We have signed supply agreements to support our silicon carbide wafers, which is very critical for the business, which will secure this year and next year's demand. In addition, our silicon business, medium voltage, also remains very strong. So overall, the growth constraint is by production, not demand. We cannot make enough devices. So let me give you some updates on how we are positioned in PMS in Korea. So the question is, can you provide additional details on the company's capacity ramp-up plans? As we previously disclosed, PMS is projected to generate between $30 and $33 million this year, up from about $9 million last year. And we project to double that to around $60 million in 2024. And we plan to rapidly increase capacity, and we expect revenues to follow the similar trend growth. The silicon carbide industry is expected to be growing at over 30% up to 2027, okay, reaching around 6.3 billion by that date. We expect, because we're a small company, to actually outgrow that substantially. And I would reiterate our target to achieve EBITDA break even by the middle of this year. Which are the major sectors and end markets for PMS? So currently we're engaged in these four major sectors. The first one is PV, solar panel inverters. Okay, this industry is projected to grow at 18%. So it's high growth rate. Okay, data centers also projected to grow around 8%, not so high, but still not too bad. The EV charging station is the highest growth, because the industry is behind the curve. There's not enough EV charging stations, and governments are throwing billions of dollars to improve this infrastructure. So the compound growth rate is estimated around 44% in the next 5 years. And then finally, of course, onboard automotive for EV cars, about 30%. Okay, now the first three segments are the main segments we're delivering today, because the EV part on board takes a lot longer to qualify, because anything to do with the car needs more qualification. But by Q4 this year, we expect our EV auto exposure to rapidly increase. Now, some of you may have seen that we are asking shareholders to approve a private placement. And the reason we want to do that is we want to have all options open to raise capital, because we have to invest much more heavily in PowerMaster in order to capture this big demand. The problem is lead time for equipment is between 6 to 18 months, and you have to pay 85% upfront in order to book your equipment. And we're fighting with many other companies to do that. So we need to invest much more rapidly and much more heavily in order to boost our growth. We have not decided on whether we will or will not do a private placement, but we just want the option as well. Of course, debt is another option too. Now, some of you may have read Tesla announced recently that it will reduce the need for silicon carbide 75%. Well, what does it mean? Frankly, it actually is totally misleading, I'm sorry to say. Tesla is really referring to its future low-cost car platform, which they are planning to design. And this low-cost model will definitely use less silicon carbide. And this is what they talk about, is reduction of 75% in their new models, but not their existing models. And because the new models will be cheaper, they will have smaller batteries, and they do not need fast charging. That's why they don't need so much silicon carbide. And further, Tesla has said it targets to sell 20 million cars by 2030. Last year, they sold 1.3 million cars. So if we assume 70% of the 20 million cars with a low-cost model using 75% less silicon carbide, Tesla would still need to buy 700% more SiC than they are buying today. Of course, if they didn't do that, it'll be much, much higher. Most low-cost EV cars, other brands, already have reduced their need for silicon carbide. So basically, Tesla is actually behind the other cars' technology, because they were the first to start. The others have moved on to different technology using less silicon carbide. But the forecast for silicon carbide growth has taken this into effect. So you must not think that all of a sudden Tesla has found a way to reduce the need for silicon carbide by 75%. It's absolutely not the case. It's only in their future programs, and all the other car companies have similar programs as well. And if you look at all the stocks that were related to silicon carbide when Tesla announced this thing and they dropped, they have all rebounded when investors understood what it really means. So the size of the market is still going to grow, and this is updated, and I would say includes this statement that Tesla says it would reduce. In fact, I think this is still too small, because if they can really sell 20 million cars, which I don't think so, they will need a lot more silicon carbide than is in this projection. Nevertheless, the projection is strong, and it's not only EV cars, okay? It's solar power, it's motor drives, it's rail, UPS, wind, many other devices need silicon carbide, but obviously the EV cars are the most high profile and fastest growing. And EV cars continue to grow. They reached 13% last year, of total auto market, and we expect that to continue to grow over the next 5-7 years. Okay, another chart saying the same sort of thing. PMS has a very clear silicon carbide MOSFET technology roadmap, and our team are very advanced, and we will develop new models which will reduce the need for silicon carbide MOSFET, because we want the price to go down so that more companies will adopt the technology going forward. And as you know, HANA's core business is developing all the packaging solutions for silicon carbide, and we will package those for the China market in China and for the rest of the world in Thailand because of this decoupling issue. Okay, so I've got 20 minutes for questions, and I look forward to anything you have to say.
คำถามแรกนะคะที่ได้รับนะคะเดี๋ยวจะถามคุณลิชาร์ดนะคะ They are asking if our product is used in the robot or not.
I don't really know, but I'm sure that if robots need to have their batteries recharged, we can probably use silicon carbide.
คุณลิชาร์ดตอบว่านะคะถ้าไม่แน่ใจเท่าไหร่แต่ว่าถ้าหุ่นยนต์เนี่ยจะต้องใช้แบตเตอรี่ที่มันรีชาร์จค่ะก็สามารถที่จะใช้ซิลิคอนคาร์บายของเราได้ค่ะคำถามต่อไปไหมคะ Next question please คำถามต่อไปนะคะรถ EV กำลังเป็นที่นิยมทางบริษัทได้ประโยชน์ตรงนี้ด้วยหรือไม่ The EV is popular now. Our company get benefits from this.
Of course, the faster the rate of adoption for EV, the more need for fast charging and the more need for silicon carbide. So doesn't matter where it is, but I want to stress that our focus is to deliver our silicon carbide devices to the China market. You may know that China is the world's largest EV producer and consumer. We're a small company just starting out. We have to be selective where we target our market, and we target it in China because China is very interested to work with a company that's not considered Western in influence. And all the major silicon carbide companies today are all either European or American.
คำตอบนะคะคุณริชาร์ดตอบว่ารถ EV ที่เป็นที่นิยมเนี่ยมีประโยชน์กับบริษัทอย่างแน่นอนในแง่ของซิลิคอนคาร์บายนะคะแต่ว่าจุดประสงค์หลักของ HANA ตอนนี้เราโฟกัสไปที่ตลาดทางเมืองจีนเพราะว่าด้วยความที่ตลาดสากลทั่วไปทางด้านตะวันตกเนี่ยก็มีใช้ซิลิคอนคาร์บายแต่เราต้องเลือกว่าเราจะไปโฟกัสจุดทางไหนก่อนนะคะแล้วตลาดจีนก็เป็นตลาดที่ค่อนข้างกว้างอยู่ตอนนี้แล้วก็หลากหลายในทางลูกค้าด้วยนะคะคำถามต่อไปนะคะ Next question please
Okay, so whilst we're waiting for any other questions to come up, maybe I can give you a little bit more information about the inlay business, because as you can hear from what I'm telling you, the core business at the moment, because of the strong Thai baht and the down cycle in semiconductors, it was going to be under pressure this year. But as you also can hear, HANA has a lot of exciting new opportunities, which is going to drive our growth, in the following years. Obviously, silicon carbide is one of them, but the other one is this RFID active tag. Can you imagine everything in the next 5 years that is sold in the major retailing stores will not have a barcode, but will have an active tag? The reason is that these retailing companies, when they want to control and take account of their inventory, they can do it with a special reading machine by just pointing this reader at all the products, and the data will be sent wirelessly to the reader. Today, if you want to find out how many pairs of jeans, for example, you have to go up to every one with your barcode reader and read it. So if you have to count 500,000 genes, it's going to take you a long time. With one of these readers, you can get the information in a few seconds. And what's good for the retailer is that they pass on the cost of these tags, which are not expensive, between 3 and 10 cents, to all their suppliers. So all the suppliers of these big companies are told, you have to put one of these tags on everything you sell to us, and you're paying for it. So for the retailer, they get all the benefits of productivity in controlling their inventory, and they don't have to pay any money for it. And this is a big business, which HANA has got into, and we have designed our own products. So it's not just assembly now. We have our own product like silicon carbide, and this is going to drive our growth for that RFID sector quite strongly over the next 3 to 4 years.
มีคำถามต่อไปไหมคะ
Okay, so whilst we're waiting for any more questions, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about our silicon carbide expansion plans. So, as I said earlier, many people are, many of the big companies involved in this want to expand silicon carbide because the demand is very high, and everyone is chasing the equipment. If you want to buy equipment, you have to put down 80% of the cost. And the lead time is sometimes a year or more. So the reason why we need to raise more funds is because we want to expand more quickly, because we can sell everything we can make, but we can't make everything we can sell. So we have to buy more equipment, and you have to place 85% down to buy it, and then expect it to come in a year and a half from now. So that's what we have to do. We have to quickly expand and invest and book the equipment so that we have the increased capacity in the future to expand our business. Okay, this is very important, and having a potential private placement is one option of raising money to do that. Of course, taking on debt is another option. As you know, debt now is very expensive. It's at a high not seen for over 40 years. To borrow money in dollars costs about 7 to 8% now per year, so it's very expensive. Nevertheless, there is no choice. If you want to make some large capital expenditures, you have to fund it, and you have to find the best way of funding it. So having a private placement is one option. It is not the only option. Any questions?
มีคำถามเพิ่มเติมไหมคะ คำถามต่อไปนะคะปีนี้เรามีความกังวลเรื่องอะไรบ้างที่จะทำให้แผนงานของเราไม่เป็นไปตามความเป้าหมายนะคะ What is our worry about the outlook of our plan?
Silicon carbide.
Yeah, in overall.
Well, every company has to, nobody knows the future demand of anything. You have to make a business judgment on what you think is going to happen in the future, and then position your company accordingly. So I'm not really worried about it because I can't do much about the future, but our job as senior managers is to understand what we believe the various industrial sectors that that we're exposed to, how they're going to perform. And we've been doing this for a long time, so we understand them quite well, but you will never know exactly what will happen in the future. So I don't worry about it too much. I mean, what I can say is that, at this point in time, with high interest rates and the Fed saying they intend to keep them high until inflation reduces substantially, it's going to have an impact on discretionary spending. Okay, so we must bear that in mind, and that's why we are not today heavily expanding in our core business, but we are heavily expanding in the two main businesses which we believe will be unaffected by high interest rates, and that is silicon carbide and RFID inlays.
คำตอบของคุณวิชานะคะความกังวลของบริษัทนะคะเราก็มีความกังวลในเรื่องที่ค่าเงินบาทนะคะที่แข็งตัวขึ้นแล้วก็เรื่องดอกเบี้ยนะคะแต่ว่าอย่างไรก็ตามเราก็มีทิศทางของบริษัทที่เป็นอนาคตว่าเราจะมุ่งไปทางไหนแล้วก็ซึ่งซิลิคอนคาร์ไบด์เนี่ยเป็นธุรกิจที่ค่อนข้างตอบโจทย์ของเราที่ว่าจะเป็นอนาคตของบริษัทได้นะคะข้อต่อไปนะคะ Who are the major competitors of HANA the competitive landscape นะคะโอเคใครเป็นคู่แข่งหลักของบริษัท HANA นะคะ
Well, we have a lot of competitors in many fields. We have competitors for our OSAT business. We have competitors for our EMS business. I don't think we have any one big company that is always, fighting us. We have, I would say, most of our competitors for the IC packaging business are in Malaysia. Unisem, Carsem, these sort of companies. We have a lot of Chinese competition for RFID. We have competition in Europe, in America. For every sector that we deal with, we will have competitors. So this is the way business has been, right from day one. We don't worry about competition. We look at ourselves and try and improve ourselves.
คำถามต่อไปเป็นภาษาอังกฤษอีกเหมือนกันนะคะ How much is the GPM for RFID tags?
I can't give specific gross margins for different products, but I'm willing to share with you that the RFID tag gross margin is more attractive than the IC packaging business. Okay, of course the IC packaging business is very well established and very big, but the RFID business will be high volume, and therefore it's a more interesting business if I compare it with our IC packaging. I don't think that the RFID will ever get as big as IC packaging, but it's going to still be quite substantial.
ถามต่อไปนะคะ This product readers.
Oh, so the readers. We don't make the readers. Other companies make readers. I think you're talking about readers for RFID tags. We're not involved in making the specific readers. We're just making the tags. And I think the kind of chips that are used come from all sorts of companies like TI, Dialog, and I guess specific chips designed for the reader, whatever it does. That's usually how most products are designed.
โอเคนะคะมีคำถามภาษาไทยนะคะว่าอยากทราบทิศทางการเติบโตของบริษัทปีนี้จะเติบโตไปทางไหนนะคะ They want to know the outlook of our company growth this year.
So company growth this year. So as I explained to you, we see a negative cycle on the OSAT business, but our EMS business is still positive. Now, which one is more than the other? I am not sure yet. Of course, we are fairly confident of the growth of our silicon carbide business. So I still believe that HANA as a top line can grow over last year, even though the overall general situation is not that good, because our silicon carbide and RFID businesses are growing very, very fast. Okay, So I think there is a chance to see a net increase in top-line revenue growth, but I don't expect it to be very, very substantial because, as I mentioned, the first half of this year, we are expecting to see a downward trend for the assembly and test business.
คำตอบคุณริชาร์ดนะคะเรื่องทิศทางของการเติบโตบริษัทปีนี้นะคะทางเราค่อนข้างมั่นใจสำหรับธุรกิจทางด้านซิลิคอนคาร์บายและ RFID tag นะคะแต่ว่าถามว่าท็อปไลน์ของเราคุณริชาร์ดมั่นใจว่าจะโตกว่าปีที่แล้วนะคะแต่ว่าอาจจะไม่โตแบบก้าวกระโดดนะคะเนื่องจากปัจจัยหลายๆอย่างของที่ท่านได้กล่าวมานะคะอย่างเช่นค่าเงินบาทนะคะ
So we have a few minutes more. Any last questions? Okay, maybe I can just finally then a quick summary of the overall outlook. As I said just earlier, many industries now are looking at the interest rate cycle and have concerns that consumer demand will be impacted by high interest rates. So this is something which we all know is happening because central banks want to reduce inflation. Okay, so this is something which is going to impact us and many companies. All right, the strong Thai baht compared to last year will have an impact on our operating profits. But as you know, HANA hedges, so we try to offset that. Okay, but again, interest rates is something that interest rates and exchange rates is something that we really cannot control. So I would say overall, the macro global economic outlook is not particularly exciting because we have a situation where central banks are raising interest rates to reduce inflation. It looks like the war in Ukraine isn't going to stop anytime soon, but now the world has kind of got used to living with this situation, and you see energy prices starting to stabilize. I do hope that that will reduce energy costs sometime in the future, and that will help us as well. Okay, but against this, HANA is fortunate because we have invested in years before for the future, and that future becomes now, okay, in silicon carbide and inlays. So we do have some exciting opportunities that will help to offset the more typical cycles that we're seeing now, which are driven by macroeconomic issues such as exchange rates and interest rates as well. So, the future still looks very interesting and exciting, but we have to be realistic that the world's growth levels are not going to be as they were post-COVID situation coming up very strongly. But I still think, particularly with silicon carbide, that we have found something that will continue to drive our group's growth over the next 5 years and beyond.
คำถามสุดท้ายนะคะองค์ประกอบของต้นทุนหลักของสินค้าของบริษัทมีสัดส่วนกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์ What is the ratio of the percentage of our key products?
Ratio?
Yes.
About mobiles about 30%, auto about 20%, optoelectronics about 10%. I think I have a chart here which I can, RFID 11, consumer 9, PC 5, and medical 4. This is the updated product and application.
เป็นเทเลคอม 27% นะคะ Automotive 20, Industrial 12%, Opto Product 12%, RFID 11%, Consumer 9%, Computer 5% และMedical นะคะ 4% ค่ะ
Okay, I think our time is run out, so I would like to thank everyone for your interest in HANA, and I look forward to seeing you when we announce the first quarter.